I think it's just vapor.
Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
One vape pod has as much nicotine as one pack of cigarettes. Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council.
After a spring lull, the June jobs report shows the labor market is heating up again.
The report suggests that the recovery is now gaining steam, that the economy is coming back stronger. We're seeing these benefits roll off. We're seeing childcare becoming more available. We're seeing workers' concerns about the pandemic easing.
What the latest report tells us about the path and the pace of the recovery. And e-truck maker Lordstown Motors is coming under scrutiny by the Justice Department. Plus, how families are celebrating Hanukkah and Halloween and all the holidays in between. It's Friday, July 2nd. I'm Anne-Marie Fertoli for The Wall Street Journal. This is the PM edition of What's News, the top headlines and business stories that moved the world today. Employers added 850,000 jobs in June, marking the biggest gain in 10 months. Wages rose too, showing there's robust demand for workers. But the unemployment rate also rose slightly to 5.9%, in part because more Americans seem to be coming off the sidelines to look for work. Speaking from Washington today, President Biden attributed the progress to vaccines and his American Rescue Plan and said it's flipping the script on the jobs market.
Instead of workers competing with each other for jobs that are scarce, employers are competing with each other to attract workers. That kind of competition in the market doesn't just give workers more ability to earn higher wages, it also gives them the power to demand to be treated with dignity and respect in the workplace. More jobs, better wages. That's a good combination. Put simply, our economy is on the move, and we have COVID-19 on the run.
We'll have more on the June jobs report coming up later in the show. President Biden is calling on the U.S. military to remove the handling of sexual harassment and assault cases from the chain of command and hand them off to military lawyers. It would mark one of the biggest changes in the history of the military. Military statistics show that reported incidents of sexual assault and harassment have doubled in the past decade, and there's been growing frustration on Capitol Hill about the military's inability to tackle the problem. Senior officials told reporters during a telephone briefing that the White House will push Congress to enact legislation to make the legal changes and give the military until 2023 to implement them. We report exclusively that electric truck startup Lordstown Motors is now facing an inquiry by the Justice Department. Sources say it's being handled by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan and is still in early stages. It's just the latest in a series of challenges for the Ohio-based vehicle maker. According to the company, Lordstown is also being looked at by the Securities and Exchange Commission. That inquiry is related to the company's public offering through a special purpose acquisition company, or SPAC, and representations the company made about pre-orders. Lordstown said it's committed to cooperating with any investigations. Chinese regulators are targeting ride-hailing app Didi just days after its IPO. They've blocked its China business from adding new users as they review the company's cybersecurity. In a statement, the Cyberspace Administration of China said the probe was aimed at preventing risks related to national data security. Didi Global shares in the U.S. were down 5% for the day. In Surfside, Florida, search and rescue workers have recovered the body of a 7-year-old girl from the wreckage of the partially collapsed condo building. She was the daughter of a fellow firefighter and one of 2 victims found last night. The death toll now stands at 20 people. Officials say 128 people are still missing, revising earlier counts. Meanwhile, recovery efforts could be impacted by Hurricane Elsa, which forecasters say could bring heavy rain and wind to South Florida as early as Sunday. For the latest on this story, visit WSJ.com. Coming up, how increased hiring and wage growth are fueling the labor market recovery.
I'm Alex Ewell, host of the Readback from Barron's. It's been an extraordinary year for stock markets, particularly for companies going public. IPOs soared, and they show no sign of slowing down. But the boom didn't come out of the blue, and there was plenty of pain on the road to IPO success. So how do you put a price on innovation? This season on the Readback, we'll find out. We're winding back the clock on a decade of IPOs, from Moderna and Facebook to Uber and Airbnb. The Readback is available wherever you get podcasts.
Hiring is up, and so are wages. The June jobs report shows the labor market recovery is picking up the pace after lagging behind the broader recovery earlier this spring. Hiring is especially strong in the leisure and hospitality sector, and employers also added more jobs in other sectors that were hit hard by the pandemic, including retail and government. Joining me now with more on the June jobs report is Wall Street Journal labor, economics, and policy reporter Eric Morath. Hi, Eric. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Eric, once again, big gains in leisure and hospitality. As we head into the holiday weekend and the summer season, what does this tell us about the recovery in that sector?
Yeah, what it tells us is that American consumers are shifting their spending towards in-person services. They're dining out, they're traveling, they're going to the salon and going to shop in person now. And that's, getting us back to where we were before in terms of the economy really being a consumer services-based economy. And that's something, when I spoke to Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, he said the Biden administration is really pleased to be seen.
I've noticed this week down in Washington, along the mall, a lot of these vendors have come back selling T-shirts and selling, pretzels and peanuts and stuff like that, water. That's good to see. I've seen people on tour buses down here touring around. So it shows us confidence. And those jobs are important jobs because there's a whole industry of people that pre-pandemic worked in those industries and made a living in those industries. And coming out of the pandemic as we're going through it, those industries are coming back, which is good to see.
And the reason that's really encouraging is those were the hardest hit sectors. We still not fully recovered all the jobs in that space, but the fact that that's coming back this summer is really encouraging to a lot of economists.
Eric, what are the sectors that are still struggling now to keep up with these gains in other sectors like leisure and hospitality?
Yeah, well, it's more that we've seen a shift, a bit of a slowdown in other sectors, including manufacturing and home construction. A year ago, people weren't willing to go out and about, so that caused a lot of demand for goods, and we saw an uptick there. And now it's a bit of finding a level there, but it's also supply constraints. There's a supply of labor that's being constrained, but there's also chip shortages, lumber shortages, and other factors that are causing some of these good-based sectors to be a little bit slower in their gains this summer.
Let's talk about wage growth, which this report also showed, as well as improvement for low-wage workers. What can you tell us about the gains there?
We saw pretty strong wage growth in both May and June, and it really stands out when you look at the lowest paid workers. The strongest wage gains since the beginning of the pandemic have been in leisure and hospitality, especially restaurant workers, and in retail workers. And that suggests that, it's hard to find those workers, and employers are needing to step up and offer higher wages. We've seen hiring bonuses up to more than $1,000 in some cases to take a job at a fast food restaurant. It suggests the labor market on the lower end is tight, and that's conveying some benefits to workers who've been impacted, severely early on in the pandemic. Now they're coming back on board.
On the flip side, though, does this have some economists more concerned about inflation?
Yeah, it raises some concerns that as you raise wages, you need to raise prices to match. And so that certainly puts upward pressure on inflation. And it's sort of to be seen whether, we get a direct translation or if businesses can make some other adjustments. For example, making better use of automation or other technologies to make these workers more productive, or if they can cut costs elsewhere to offset the higher compensation.
Eric, we are looking at the expiration of enhanced jobless benefits in September. How is that being viewed? Is that something that we've seen helping get workers back to work, or what's the situation there?
In about 25 Republican-led states, those benefits either have now expired or will expire in the coming weeks, and that'll leave the remaining Democrat-led states to expire in September. We're starting to see some evidence, and probably didn't show up quite in this jobs report yet, but we're starting to see some evidence from other data that is encouraging workers to leave unemployment benefits and increase job search activity. Some Republicans on Capitol Hill said if those benefits, were removed nationwide, then we would see, even stronger job growth, maybe job growth into the millions, later this year.
Finally, Eric, as we head into the heat of the summer here, what does this report tell us about the state and strength of the recovery right now?
The report suggests that the recovery is now gaining steam, that the economy is coming back stronger. We're seeing these benefits roll off. We're seeing childcare becoming more available. We're seeing workers' concerns about the pandemic easing. And we're actually seeing, and this report showed, that nearly 1 million fewer people said they were out of the workforce due to the pandemic. So clearly, Americans are coming back to work. There's demand for their services. And so that raises hopes that July, August, September, that those employment reports could be even stronger and that the economy, could be well on its way to recovery.
Wall Street Journal labor, economics, and policy reporter Eric Morath. Eric, thanks so much for your time today.
Sure. Happy to join you.
And finally, this could be the busiest holiday weekend in over a year. AAA says it expects nearly 48 million people to be on the road and in the skies from July 1st to the 5th, bringing travel nearly back to pre-pandemic levels. People are using the post-pandemic gatherings to make up for all the holidays and celebrations they've missed by throwing one big holiday party. So instead of just your typical red, white, and blue 4th of July, our reporter Ray Smith says the decorations could get really interesting this weekend.
I spoke with one family that really took this very seriously. And by that, I mean, they celebrated everything from Oktoberfest to the Super Bowl to Halloween and Christmas. There was even a nod to Easter. So there was like a Peeps Easter bunny, skeletons and jack-o'-lanterns. And in one case, the jack-o'-lantern had a birthday hat, so that was a sort of a mashup, if you will. Another skeleton was drinking like a mint julep, which was a nod to Halloween, but also the Kentucky Derby. So this family in particular really went all out to not only celebrate almost every holiday and birthday that was missed last year in person, but also to even mash up the decor. So that we had several decorations that had nodded to at least 2 or more holidays.
And that's what's news for this week. Our hosts are me, Anne-Marie Fertoli, and Mark Stewart. The show was produced this week by Trenae Nori and Sam Westron, with help from Jenny Ang, Kateri Yoakum, Amanda Llewellyn, Charlie Turner, J.R. Whalen, Chris Sinsley, Zoe Thomas, and Ava Sassani. We're off on Monday, but we'll be back with a new episode on Tuesday morning. Thanks for listening.